The wind passed them as they walked in silence. Between the trees, somewhat hidden beneath the undergrowth, were ruins of buildings, some more easily spotted than others. They emerged into an open space just behind the brewery. It was a large building, rising 3 stories tall. It was surrounded by trees, and close by was found a small tavern owned by the brewery. There were no lights in the windows of either building, and all was quiet. They crossed an open space paved with cobble. A few large crates stood out in the open, marked with a dayrill, a small bird with green plumage. The little bird had a crown set on its head. Nelren led them to a door at the backside of the brewery. He knocked, and shortly after, it opened. A man stood in the opening. He resembled the siblings, but he was a tad bit larger and of broader build. His hair went down to his shoulders, and he had a mustache and sideburns. He gazed behind them and asked, "You're not followed, are you?" "No, uncle, we're not," Nelren answered. The man nodded. "Good, come on in." As they entered the house, he shouted, "They're here!" Almost immediately, a woman with fiery hair emerged from a doorway. Her eyes met Thaelen's, and she swiftly moved towards him. "Thaelen!" Thaela embraced him, hugging him hard. "Thaela," he said, "don't ever tell me to leave you again. What could we have done? If both of us had been captured, then—" "I mean it, Thaelen." He looked down. "Okay," he said at last. She gave him a slight smile, then kissed him. "You must be hungry," the man said. "Come, we have some food prepared." He led them into a larger room. A table stood in its center. Upon it had been placed an assortment of foods. There was bread, cheese, and smoked ham. Bowls had been placed, and a woman and a younger child were filling them with porridge. "My name's Galder, by the way. This is my wife, Letha, and our son, Karn." Thaelen greeted them. Then they sat down to eat. The food, though simple, was good, and he ate a lot. Conversation was had around the table, and plans were drawn. Nelren was quiet for the most part, only adding his voice when necessary. They began to talk about the escape. Galsrun was right. The dream leaf potion worked like a charm, Anaea said. Galder smiled. "Of course it worked. He knows a great deal about alchemy, that dwarf, and about morals. I'm honored to have been raised by him." How much longer before it wears off? Nelren asked. 6 more hours, give or take. Galder said, after thinking for a while. Ample enough time to put some distance between you and the city. Unless they discover our little ruse first. Nelren said. There was silence for some time. Then Anaea spoke. I was worried that you'd be captured when you caused the distraction, Taylor. It was fine. Taylor said in a voice that Thaelen knew she used when she was lying. It was quite simple, really. Cause a little ruckus, then fly away. If only I could shapeshift as well, Thaelen said. And why can't you? Anaea asked, her curiosity piqued. Thaelen looked over at her. It's difficult to learn. It requires mastery of magic that few possess. Or you can be born with it, like me, Taylor said with a smile. Granted, I can only take the shape of a falcon. But I guess there are worse shapes. Anaea nodded. So it's true. The rumored gift of the Arinda. Galder said. And the tree? Letha asked. Is it real? Taylor nodded. Tree? Anaea asked. The Rindh, Galder said. A tree that never seems to die. It grows in the courtyard of the Rinda castle in La'ide. I have been there, to the city, but never had the opportunity to see it. It's beautiful, Taylor said. Its bark is like that of the willow, yet its leaves are more like the oak. It is tall, and it can move without wind, if you believe my father. She paused for a moment, her mind transported far away. It doesn't shed its leaves in winter, as if the frost and the shorter days do not bother it. And in spring its flowers bloom, white petals with rainbow shimmer. Like adamant, they say, Letha added. Taylor nodded. Father said it whispered when I was born. But he likes to tell stories. I have never heard it whisper or speak. Chit-chatting about trees is fine, Nelren said. But we should focus on the road ahead. Nelren's right, Galder said, nodding. Anshira, that is some distance away. We could go by boat, Anaea proposed. Galder shook his head. Vern will wake up in a matter of hours, and when he does, messengers will be sent to every town in the county. You will never make it to any harbor in time. We could go south to Elrin and get a boat from there. That is possible, Nelren said. But it's just the same situation. Every border town will be on high alert. Taylor spoke. The main problem wouldn't be border towns. It would be King Roral. He didn't exactly know that our journey was to Dayrol. Galder looked at her, his expression one of surprise.
The guild is either very brave or very foolish. Roral's not the kind of man one should cross from what I have heard. East won't get you anywhere either. So it's the direct path. The northern road.
Now Thaelen, who had remained silent for some time, jumped in. But we would have to go through much of Daria by that road. Wouldn't that just cause the same issues, but on a larger scale? We are not going through the Darkland after all.
There are not many large settlements to the north,
Galder said.
If you could get close to the Darkland, the risk of running into guards would be small, minimal even. It's a long shot perhaps, but also the least likely road. And they do not know where you're going. The northern road it is then,
Nelren said, sighing. After finishing the meal, they moved to the main room of the large house, and there began to pack, and make ready for the road ahead. Galder and Letha gave them food and bedrolls, as well as some other basic necessities. Then suddenly Thaelen remembered something.
What about our horses?
He asked.
Kerto was a gift from my grandmother, an Athar breed. There's no time to think about your horses now, I'm afraid,
Galder said.
But I'll see what I can do to get them back to the guild. You have my word.
Thank you. Thaelen looked down for a moment. Then he spoke.
I'm sorry that we have dragged you into this.
Galder chuckled and shook his head.
We'll be fine. The Grand Duchess doesn't like us, but the name of the rye still holds a little importance. After all, my brew is a major export. Besides, without evidence she can't do anything. The rye?
Thaelen asked.
You mean?
Yes, he answered. The old royal line of Thaelen and Anaea. But now we're not even nobles. Thaelen and Taela looked at the siblings. Nelren's expression spoke of disdain.
This brewery is all our family has left,
Galder said.
King Ledrum IV, the penultimate king of Daria, was quite fond of brewing. It was he that founded it.
Instead of ruling, Nelren commented.
It was the only thing our family was allowed to keep.
You're not interested in reclaiming what you lost? Taela asked.
There is nothing to reclaim,
Nelren said.
Nothing but shame and failure anyhow.
Galder nodded.
We were humbled. The old kingdom is gone. There's no crown or throne to reclaim.
They continued to pack, but then at last they were finished. Then they went outside the same way that they had entered. A faint red shimmer now clung to the eastern horizon.
It's a shame your father could not be here to see you off,
Letha said. Nor grandfather? Anaea said, sighing. It's probably for the best. Had they gone here during all of this, the gods might have gotten suspicious. It would have been too much of a coincidence. Galder said. It would indeed. Nelren commented. Thank you. Thaela began. For all of this. I'll make sure that you are rewarded for your kindness in time. There's no need, Lady Arinda, though I am glad you show such heart. Not many of noble birth are truly noble. Galder said. Keep to the southern forest until the city is out of sight. Now go. The further you can get away from the city, the better. After a few more goodbyes, they were off, leaving the brewery behind. The eastern horizon was crimson. Iliva would soon rise. Her sister, Vanilla, was still high in the sky. Half lit, the goddess watched over the world below, casting it in her soft light. In only a few days, she would become a waning crescent, moving closer to Iliva. The sky was clear, barring a few clouds to the south, and a fresh wind blew amongst the trees. Dew clung to the leaves and to the grass. Birds had already begun to sing, and all the world seemed at peace. They crossed the old canal and continued south and past the crossroads. The ruins of an ancient building rose on their left. They could not have known, but those ruins were the ruins of the Seventh Mug, an inn of considerable fame. It was there that Thereth the Golden had stayed on his secret visit to Dayrol nearly 1,000 years before. They passed through the old gate, followed the trail, then cut into the forest. The shadows of Nuvia still clung to the stems of the trees. Night had yet to give way to day. They now felt secure enough to light a lantern, but remained silent as they went along. They followed the forest trail east until they came to a hapshack bridge, partly made of old stone, partly of wood. Just as they had crossed it, a loud sound rolled across the distance between them and the city. The braying sound of a trumpet. They froze. The brisk morning felt suddenly oppressive, and the breeze felt more like a warning. More trumpets answered the first, echoing its call. The alarm, Nelren said. Then haste is our ally, Thaelen said, quoting Thereth the Golden. Nelren shook his head. Why did I ever agree to this?